Hey folks, welcome back. Thanks so much for showing up. Today's video is on Ready Player One, which is a movie adaptation of a book by the same name. And unless you were born in the 80s, you might not like it. Hell, even some people who did live through the 80s and get all the references felt like that's all it really was the author waxing nostalgic about the things he grew up with. But if you love old video games and 80s pop culture, and can get the Will Wheaton audiobook from your local library, maybe check it out. A brief synopsis is, in the not-so-distant future, a virtual reality game has been integrated into nearly every aspect of life, and upon the passing of its creator, a contest is announced for the future ownership of the game, known as the Oasis. As a quick side note, I recall in Vanilla Sky, the company Life Extension, which were the creators of David's Dream, had changed their name to Oasis at some point. Now, an oasis is defined as being a fertile area with water in the middle of a desert, which I'm sure to someone lost in a desert would seem like paradise. I mention this because of the common paradisial imagery given to the idea of heaven in various world religions. Admittedly, it can be a bit confusing since the virtual reality in both movies represents our experience in our world while being named after something with paradisial heavenly connotations. Compound this with the game Oasis also in part representing the astral due to all the possibilities it offers, much like our actual dreams, not just dream reality. But regardless, whether it's represented as the dream of the lower plane or the real of the higher, the paradise keeps showing up, whether it's John Murdoch heading to Shell Beach, Truman going to Fiji, or the island from the island. You get the idea. On a whole parallel topic, there may be folks who lean more towards the transhumanism theory. The idea that man is either naturally moving towards full integration with technology, actively designing our next leap in evolution being immortality in a virtual world, or that we are unnaturally heading that way, whether by our own ignorance or outside forces using us to design their new world to inhabit. Personally, I think I subscribe to the latter. Anyway, it's established early on that its players have been divided between those who simply enjoy the game and those who devote all their energy towards the contest, being the hunt for Halliday's Easter egg. Because if they don't, the big bad corpos will, who already have plans to flood the game with advertisements. This feels like your usual player character versus non-player character. Even though they are played by actual people, by not joining the fight, the hunt for truth, they're resolving themselves to the fate of giving in to their corporate overlords, who wish to feed off of their energy. Sounds strangely familiar. James Halliday, being the creator, would obviously represent God. Wade even says this at one point, Halliday was like a god, and his character Anorak, being a wizard, the archetypal magician, also supports this. The hunt for the Easter egg seems to represent the hunt for the Holy Grail. This is reinforced by Wade's avatar being named Parzival, the knight of King Arthur's court who supposedly found the Grail. This wouldn't necessarily be noteworthy if it weren't for the esoteric theories surrounding the true meaning of the Holy Grail and its supposed relation to the Great Work. A big part of the hunt is focused on researching all the pop culture Halliday grew up with. Feels like it may be hinting at, well, stuff like this video, searching for hidden clues in entertainment media. The conversation between Ogden and James may be a little telling. James saying, "I'm a dreamer, I build worlds," hinting again at his representing a creator being. Then Ogden tells him it's not a game anymore, you've got to set rules. Which for me sort of feels like it's referencing how our world has evolved throughout history, and perhaps just like how James is pressured to change his world, ours too has been taken advantage of and become a means of harvesting energy. Just like how shareholders pressure a creator to increase revenue, even at the expense of the original vision. After winning the race, Anorak calls Wade Padawan. Basic nerdy pop culture reference, or acknowledging him as an earnest spiritual adept playing his part in the great work? I'll let you decide. Eventually, we learn the Corpos, IOI, have loyalty centers where people work off their debt by playing the game to further the company's goals. Reminds me of Amazon warehouses, and honestly, I don't know what's more cyberpunk dystopia, the VR or this. The main baddie is Nolan Sorrento, whose avatar is Dark Superman, and given the popular association of Superman to Christ, this may be suggesting a sort of Antichrist archetype. Wade and Artemis eventually meet up at a nightclub called the Distracted Globe, which feels like a jab at the sleeping masses around the world, distracted by the pursuit of pleasure of the physical senses, rather than the search for truth, i.e. the hunt. When Wade admits his love for Artemis, she responds angrily, disappointed that he's focused on that, telling him this isn't a game. People are suffering, life and death stuff. IOI feeds on people like her dad, trapped in a loyalty center, finishing with "you live in this illusion," which she's referring to the game, but since we're using the game to represent our world, the illusion would be the societal matrix of material gain, status, and pleasure seeking. Eventually the two meet outside the oasis, which may hint at the union of the masculine and feminine on both the higher and lower planes. Wade comments to her how it's so much slower here on the outside, in contrast to the game. This is one of the hints of the oasis representing in part the astral plane, since the dense physical world takes longer to manifest in. Samantha tells Wade he has to build an army, so he streams himself for everyone to see. This building a resistance by reaching out to other players, calling them to band together, feels like various spiritual communities growing and working together around the world. Also, something he mentions in his speech is that he came to the oasis to game, but stayed because he found something much bigger than himself. He found a cause, meaning the great work. This makes me think of the Bodhisattva, a spiritual figure in Hinduism who gains enlightenment, but rather than escaping samsara, chooses to stay in order to help others awaken. He asks the viewers, are you willing to zero out for the oasis? Meaning, are you willing to give your life for the cause, for the hunt, the great work? And this doesn't necessarily have to mean death per se, but rather sacrificing the material life the ego has constructed.
Careful not to lose your ship.
Interesting how the last key is found on Planet Doom, which sounds like a name for a prison planet. Prison planet, Planet Doom? Anyone?
You need to leave!
Wade's explanation of the first ever Easter egg could hold some meaning, saying you find the egg not by beating the game, i.e. winning materially at the game of life, but by wandering around in the dark, i.e. working through your own darkness perhaps? Just a thought. Sorrento sets off the catalyst, which could represent Armageddon or the apocalypse, the soul harvest, where everyone zeroes out, save for those who can retain an extra life. Since Parsifal is the Grail finder and has the extra life, it would seem the extra life is tied to the Grail or Christ consciousness, i.e. dying consciously and attaining spiritual immortality. The keyholes in the crystal door seem reminiscent of the chakras in the energy body. The final test is one of greed. Anorak offers him the company, saying everything you ever wanted. Wade passes the test by declining to sign, saying he won't make the same mistake Halliday did when he made his partner sign over his share. Halliday's Easter egg being a literal golden glowing egg reminds me of the glowing gold orbs in my great work video, so check that out if you haven't already. As we see here, Wade is illuminated, literally, and has his right eye covered by the egg, representing the Eye of Horus. Wade asks him if Halliday is dead and you're not an avatar, then what are you? But he just smiles and leaves. This could perhaps suggest that he's like a true AI of sorts, or that something of Halliday lives on after death, again hinting at transhumanism. We learn that Halliday's partner Ogden Morrow was in fact the curator, who was watching closely the whole time, there to aid those who deserve it. He could represent guardian angels or a spirit guide. Wade tells him he's planning to share ownership of the company with his team, and Og tells him, you know, James always said the Oasis was never meant to be a one-player game, suggesting that building strong, loving relationships should be a focus in this game of life. Alrighty, that was Ready Player One. I know it was mostly another virtual world movie, but hey, there were a couple nuggets in there, most notably the Holy Grail Philosopher's Stone symbolism. Anyway, I appreciate you sticking through to the end, thank you so much. You know, a lot of these videos get flagged for copyright, which totally nerfs the viewing traffic, so watching to the end and all the other things definitely helps out my channel in particular, so thank you.